Hey everybody, happy Monday to you. Somebody asked me a really good question a couple weeks ago about how eating disorders affect relationships, specifically like dating relationships or marriage relationships or partnership relationships, but really they affect all relationships. But to address this one specifically, eating disorders, if you have an eating disorder, aren't the only one that is affected by it. Everybody that you come in contact with, whether they know it or not, whether you know it or not, is affected by your eating disorder. This is especially true in a relationship. Now I've been married for 12 and a half years, and yes, I got married pretty young, but my eating disorder has been in various stages throughout that time. So when I got married 13 years or 12 and a half years ago, I thought I was completely over my eating disorder. I was healed, hallelujah. And the fact is, when you're in an intense emotion, sometimes you think with your emotion and not with your head. And so I would beg you to keep that in mind, because I've met a lot of people in my life that do everything, make every decision by feeling, because it feels right, because that's what their intuition tells them, because that's what their God tells them. Because, and I'm not like knocking any of that, just like, okay, don't think I'm knocking that, but a lot of times you have to be able to separate out what really is your intuition or inspiration or whatever you call it, between that and emotion. And this is especially true with eating disorders, because eating disorders are so driven by emotion. And and I think an eating disorder is really, whether, I'm not saying everybody with an eating disorder is bipolar, but it's kind of a bipolar illness, because you go through these cycles, and you step on the scale and you've lost 2 pounds, and woohoo, you have a great day and everything's wonderful, and the next day you can tank and bottom out, and it goes up and down like that. And when it gets bad enough, eventually the downs are usually a lot lower and a lot more often than the ups. But when you first get into a relationship, sometimes it can mask all that, and you can think that you have dealt with more things than you have, and that the relationship is healing that. And while healthy relationships can contribute to healing, if you're basing your healing off of the presence of another person or relationship, that is called codependence. And I guarantee you that once you get off your high, things are going to go back to where they were, and it's going to be more complicated, because now suddenly you've involved somebody else in your relationship. So if you are lucky enough to already not be in a relationship or just starting a relationship, you have an advantage over somebody like me that's already been in a long-term relationship for a long time and didn't share my eating disorder with my spouse until about 2.5 years ago. So the problem with not sharing your eating disorder is that it means that you're having to cover up and have a life of deception. And so it's almost like having an affair, it's not a sexual affair, obviously, but it is an affair, because you have this relationship with your eating disorder, and then you have a relationship with this other person. And that creates some conflicts, and whether they know about your eating disorder or not, it's going to come up, because there's going to be times when you're so into your eating disorder that they think that they've done something wrong, or they don't understand why they can't get through to you. They don't understand why you're in a bad mood. They don't understand why you think you're fat. They don't understand it. And so you need to help them by, one, being honest with them, and two, teaching them how to handle your eating disorder. A really good thing to do would be to, if you have a counselor or a therapist that you trust, or somebody as a resource that you can talk to, like an eating disorder clinic, say, hey, I am in recovery, and I'm in this relationship, and I want this person who loves me to help me, and so I want to help him or her understand that what how they need to respond to my eating disorder and what is their responsibility, what is my responsibility. Because one of the things they tend to do is they want to rescue, they want to save you from your eating disorder, because here's this person that they love and care about and they can see is struggling and hurting themselves, and they can sometimes see all the negative health consequences, and that's scary to them. That feels out of control to them, and so they may overreact. This is what happened with my relationship with my spouse, is that he was constantly overreacting because he was terrified that I was going to die. And part of the problem with that, so the problem is when you have an eating disorder and you have friends or family or loved ones, that are trying to help you, sometimes the eating disorder becomes the focus and not the person. So you need to help them understand that you are a person aside from your eating disorder, and they need to treat you and talk to you like a person and not make the object of your relationship based on the eating disorder, because that's what's going to kill the relationship faster than anything. And it's not only going to be a burden on both of you, it's probably going to be harmful to your eating disorder, because we have control issues around our eating disorder. When people try to start to control that for us, it becomes really bad, because we tend to go more towards our eating disorder, because now suddenly we're in this conflict. And yes, sorry, children are popping in everywhere. Anyway, this is part of the conflict. So you need to help them understand that you are you. I am Tara. I am not the bulimic. I'm not the anorexic. I'm not the eating disordered person. I am Tara. I have an eating disorder. I'm recovering from an eating disorder, but the eating disorder is not who I am, and them treating you like that is also feeding into that identity that you have of identifying yourself as your eating disorder, which doesn't help you to separate it, which is really one of the things that you need to do to heal and to recover, is to start to begin to separate, who you really are versus who your eating disorder is, and what you're saying versus what your eating disorder is saying. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the book Life Without Ed, but if you haven't, I recommend you go check it out. It's by Jenny Schaefer. You can get it at Amazon. Barnes & Noble, I think, carries it too. Life Without Ed. It's a really good, kind of fun book to help you understand the difference between your voice and your eating disorder voice. But it can also be a good resource for spouses, because it can help them see into the mind of somebody with an eating disorder and how they think and how to work through those relationships. But honesty is really key. If once you start being dishonest, and that means that you're giving more time and attention to your eating disorder and more loyalty to your eating disorder, which we tend to do. We tend to be more loyal to our eating disorders than everybody else around us, which adds to our guilt, but that's just how it is. And so when you start to be the dishonest, that means that's a red flag, and that will affect your relationship. So you need to figure out a way to be honest. And if you're in a relationship, get the support you need around you to get into a safe enough place with that person that you can disclose that to them and that you can work through that. You need to be in a safe place, so you may have to involve a counselor or professional. But the longer you go that you don't tell them, the more distance and the more problems you're driving into your relationship. So I hope that helps. Thanks.